We're live. I'm an idiot. Okay.
Support, certainly.
Okay, and myself, full support as well. Echo Lisa's sentiments that these gentlemen have served in uniform admirably, and we thank them for their service to their communities. Calling the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3. Eric?
In favor.
And myself in favor, so that is unanimous. And can we record it as that, please? Now, is this recorded as the motion as a recommendation or as a decision, Rob?
As a recommendation to council.
Okay. But this is giving you the ability to move forward on the budget with this consideration.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. All right. That decision has been made. We're now going to F1. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you all.
Appreciate your time and writing the report and bringing that forward to council. Number F2 or F1, pardon me, checks issued report. And Shana, I believe that is yourself.
Yes, this is my report. Thank you.
I don't see you yet, Shana, but I know you're there. Should you be on my screen?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you.
I should be on your screen. Can anyone else see me?
I cannot see you. I could at the beginning of the meeting.
It's okay. We can go verbal, Shana. That's fine.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on. Oh,
You've got your camera now. You're good.
I turned it off and on again. That usually helps. So checks issued report. We've paid the normal $125,000 to $130,000 range in salaries for the month of August, and outgoing checks for August came in at $443,000. I'll direct you to page 5, 6, 7. Page 7 that outlines the extraordinary expenses, and then the following checks issued summary. Open to questions.
Okay. We're looking at the checks issued report, and we will have a motion to receive as information, I believe, or accept as information. But have I got it from you, Paul?
No, you have a question from me.
Okay. Go ahead with your question.
So, I'm just looking at the one there for certified playground inspections. My recollection is that we did our own inspections. And then it says it's a playground rehab plan. So I wasn't aware that we were doing playground rehabilitation plans.
I might ask Bill Luca to speak to that if I could, please.
Yes,
Hello,
I'd
Bill.
like to. Hello. Am I echoing again?
No, you're good.
Okay. Yes, there was a budget approved in the capital budget for a playground rehabilitation plan. And that stemming budget item that you're referring to, or the expense, was to undertake that plan.
And so I see later on in our budget, there's a bunch of money being suggestion is to allocate for rebuilding playgrounds. So where is this report that was done that led to putting those line items in the budget?
We could provide it to council or to finance and economic development. So there has been a formal report. I can provide it at whatever fashion is deemed appropriate.
I'm happy with electronic copy, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody else need something more than an electronic copy? I'm not hearing that. Bill, can you provide that, please?
Yes, for sure.
Thank you. Other questions of Bill Luca? Lisa? Can't hear you, Lisa. No. Now we will.
I also had a question about the the park playground rehab plan. What were they specifically looking at, Bill?
It's just an inspection of the playgrounds by
All of
yes, all the playgrounds that are under our operations care and responsibility. So it's just to do an inspection and do a long-term rehabilitation plan when equipment would have to be replaced due to age. And part of that inspection, some deficiencies were identified.
Okay, I do look forward to that report. I have another question for Sheena. Under Paderns, it says H2O truck for pre-wetting roads prior to. I'm not sure what that sentence.
Cut.
Yeah, it happened with a couple of them, so I don't know if you might be able to go over those ones.
Let me just check quick here.
Excuse me, through the chair. Lisa, what's the number for that, please?
035395.
Okay, thank you.
I think, but yeah.
Let me open the actual Excel version of the file and see if I can expand that column.
Okay.
So it was a water truck for pre-wetting roads prior to calcium application.
Okay. And then for Steelhead Ventures water truck services.
For dust suppressant program.
The Xlim.
It's Xylem.
Yeah.
It's the cost of rental pumps for lift station 1 during the flood and cost for tech to disconnect and collect rental pumps.
Okay.
And then Morrison was for services rendered through July.
Okay.
For both lines.
Okay.
What did Morrison do?
Engineering reviews and approvals. I don't have the specific services or the account that it was applied to. I'd have to look into that one and get back to you.
Okay, that's fine.
You want to ask Bill Luca that question? Paul?
I don't know. Can he answer it?
I don't know. Are you there, Bill?
Yeah, I suspect I have several capital projects, and Morrison Hirschfield has been working on developing some subdivision servicing standards. So without seeing the invoice, I suspect that's what that invoice was for.
Okay. We're not certain, but that's your best estimate at this time.
Yes.
Shayna, you can bring that one back as a certainty to council?
I'll bring it back as business arising to the next Finance and Ec meeting.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Anything else? I can't see Eric.
Yeah, I had the same question as Councillor Ryan with regard to playground inspections. I think that we now have Kendra doing playground inspections, and did we double up on that, or I sort of missed that part of it.
I don't think it was mentioned, but Bill Luca, have you got a personnel assignment to that?
Yes, the Parks Department, which is under Kendra, is now taking over playground inspections. And so we're not doubling it up. Utilities doesn't have the resources to continue to provide that. And we don't want to have it under two different departments.
Yeah, I get that part of it, but we've got this $8,100 showed up talking about a rehab plan. So there's an inspection regularly, and then there's an inspection for rehab on top of that. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, it's actually quite similar to our bridge rehabilitation program. We brought in someone with some expertise to assess our playgrounds and tell us when to prepare it on a 10-year plan, and longer than that, actually, when parts or equipment will need to be replaced. And as part of that, some deficiencies were identified in our existing playgrounds.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're still on page 7. Paul Clark, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, very good. And I have nothing. So do we have a motion to,
I'll move it.
who said that?
Paul Ryan. I'll move it,
Paul
receive
Ryan?
his information.
Okay, I looked down, Paul. I couldn't see who was speaking. So we have recommendations for one, which is payroll checks to accept as information. Calling the question, all in favor? I see 1, 2. Eric?
In favor?
Paul Clark's in favor. I am in favor. Thank you. Moving on to checks registered. Is this yours again, Shana?
Through the chair, we just covered this
Yeah.
Okay, so
report.
so there's nothing more to be said under those checks that the detail?
No. Not from
Okay.
myself.
I had one. I didn't recognize two companies. One is BESERIS.
Esri?
Yeah.
What page did you see that one on?
I'm on page 11, second from the bottom. It's the $3,000, almost $4,000 expense, but I don't recognize the company. I don't know what the deliverable is. Zero 3 5 4 3 8.
She's access to agent.
Oh, Viserys. I will have to look that one up and get back to you with the Morrison. Oh, it's herbicides. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Here it
That makes
is.
sense.
It is on page, yes, 7 as well.
Okay. And the other one is firm, which is page 10, fourth from the bottom, fifth from the bottom.
The fund. Where we get our funds from.
Very small amount, but I don't recognize that company as a previous account.
I'll have to look that one up.
Okay, and that's fine with me. Thank you. Second motion, recommendation number 2. Do I have that motion? I have it from Lisa.
Sorry, I have a question.
Oh, a question as well. Well, we don't charge for motions, but questions are expensive. Go ahead.
And I think I know the answer to this. I just want to confirm, but for check number 035383, Fulford Accounting and something,
Yes,
is that Doug Fulford?
correct.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion for recommendation 2, please?
I
Yes.
think it's all as one, is it not?
I did the first one, but I think yeah. So it was mentioned that we've done both of them, but payroll check was the first one. Checks registered issue is the second one. So do I have a motion for the second item here?
I think you had it from Paul Clark.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Paul Clark's got it. Calling question, all in favor? 1, 2. Eric?
Yes.
3, 4, and 5. Thank you. Approved. Thank you, Shayna, for all the work you do putting that together for us. And I suspect we have more familiarity with the business of the organization than most municipalities can get down to, but it is the advantage of being a smaller organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one, Shane, I believe is yours too, which is the draft budget.
Round
And
one.
Yeah, and I will point out to everybody, this is a new format. And Shayna, when I went through it, I really appreciate this new format. I found it easy to follow through with. So thank you for formatting as well as the detail.
Thank you.
Go ahead and introduce your report, please.
So today I'd like to introduce the first draft of the 2020 budget presentation for discussion and recommendation from the committee with respect to any amendments that they may feel are required or improvements that they wish to see. Section 242 of the MGA requires council to adopt an operating budget, and Section 245 requires council to adopt capital budgets for each calendar year. And then Section 243 stipulates the operating budget must include transfers to reserves and transfers to the capital budget. Outlined today is the draft for your operating and capital budgets. Our budget process typically starts this time of year, and we cycle through several meetings at the Finance and Economic Development Committee level, and then work toward a final copy that will be presented in hopefully November or December to council. I'll draw your attention to our overall tax requirement this year. We're looking at a tax requirement of $6,419,760,000. This is roughly a 1% increase from the previous year. And mill rates are difficult to predict until we get the assessment values in February from the provincial assessor as well as our municipal assessor. However, based on the 2020 assessments that we taxed on this year, it would also equate to approximately a 1% increase from the 2020 mill rate. But that could look different depending on our assessment values. We can open it up to questions, or we can continue on through the presentation.
So just to be clear, you have covered to what page in your manual?
Page 19.
We're not on the reserve budget yet. That's the next page, right?
Reserve budget is a few pages,
this discussion? Yeah. So that's the next discussion, right?
We can discuss it page by page. That was my introduction.
Okay, so we're now on page 21?
Yes.
Okay. If there are no questions on the introduction, Paul Clark, you have a question on the introduction?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. Shayna, if you were to extrapolate that to out for the next 4 years using the same assessment value, do you have a feeling for what the tax rate would be as well?
I haven't calculated it as yet. I just focused on the 2021. It's difficult to predict assessment that far out, but I would think that the increases would be. It also depends on some of the items that come forward from the province over the next little while. So predicting 4 years out right now is a little difficult with trying to predict a mill rate based on the first draft of the budget.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Appetite of the committee, we can look at that for the second draft.
Very good answer. Thank you.
The reason I called the question or asked the question is that I was wondering whether we'd see any spikes going out in the next 3 or 4 years given that we've got a very modest increase here, do we need to build up our reserves to cover spikes that may occur in the next 3 or 4 years? That's the question.
Yep.
That's the basis of the question.
An excellent question, Paul, and I think we can get at that one as we move forward. But I'm glad you asked it.
Okay.
Have you got another one, Paul?
I don't know.
Okay, Lisa?
Sheena, there's also a note here that says increases to take note of include administration has anticipated increased legal expenses. Why is that?
In part, we're looking at historical budget numbers. So part of the increases are due to just comparing actual to budget from past years. And then there are some potential legal issues that we will be possibly having expenditures in this year. So we want to make sure that we're budgeting accurately rather than having insufficient funds collected to cover potential legal over the next year or upcoming years.
Is it fair to say that we will have a fair amount of intermunicipal agreement work?
That is one way of putting it, yes.
Does that clarify it for you, Lisa?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Eric?
Does this budget appears to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are anticipating no change to linear taxes?
I have incorporated at this point no change to linear. I do not have anything concrete from the province to indicate what those changes are going to be. We may have to address that down the road if they address or if they issue any statements. I have no formal statement though, so I need to move forward and create our budget as though it will be status quo.
So you're dealing with certainties, not probabilities.
Correct.
Okay. Eric, another question?
Not yet. I've got some comments for page 21, but we're not quite there, I don't think. Are we, or are we?
Oh, no, we're on page 21, actually.
Okay, well then my question would be, well, I got a couple. I always get confused between legislative and council. But I see they're both slight increases from budgeted, but with the issues surrounding COVID and our absence of meetings and our absence of hotel rooms and our absence of lunches and other meals, I should think the cost of running this council is considerably lower this year. It'd be nice to have a bit of an idea how much lower at another date, obviously not today. And then how does that reflect going into next year?
I prefer to budget based on regular non-COVID operations. If we come in under budget in 2021, and it looks like this is going to be the new trend with ongoing online meetings and reduced costs, we can adjust the budget for 2022. We don't know what the pandemic's going to bring over the next year and how that will present itself as council expenses, which is why there isn't much of an increase in the expenses from this year. Budgeted, but the budget to actual, if it does come in lower, then we have the provision to allocate those excess funds to our reserve accounts.
Yeah, I get that, and I'm supportive of that, but I'm still thinking that we're going to come in considerably below budget for this calendar year.
That is likely going to be the case, yes. And I can collect that information again for a future finance meeting and bring that forward for you.
Thank you.
Paul Clark. Oh, Eric,
Thank you.
hold on, Paul. Eric, did you have another one?
Well, I have a couple other ones, but I can go wait my turn if everybody
No,
takes one.
I want you to finish what you were working towards.
Okay, well, I typically at first blush look at the outliers, and there's about 4 of them. I see there's a big expense in administration. We've heard a little bit about legal. I don't know if that's what it's all about. Roads is going down, agriculture and parks is going up, and I assume that is parks rather than agriculture. Am I correct in that?
No, it's actually agriculture. The change is that there's been a considerable cut in the provincial funding for the agriculture grant program. So we will have to make up that shortfall in that grant funding through collecting taxation.
Right, but I'm aware of that, but I'm not aware of how we allocate the costs within that department. With Kendra's time now being some of it being devoted to parks, that should reduce the cost on the agriculture side because it's being spent on the park side. So is there actually an increase on the agriculture side, or is it offset by, or should or could it be offset by some of the staff time being delegated to parks?
For the second draft, I'll split the 2 out so that we can see 2 clear, distinct lines between agriculture and parks. And then that should give us a better idea. I'll have to do an analysis of the proration of Kendra's salary and whatnot as well.
Thank you. I think that'd be very helpful.
Another one, Eric?
Well, perhaps a brief summary of the 23% increase in administration.
Part of that increase is the increase in the legal section that we've put in. As well, we've put in a allowance for a part-time administrative person to assist with functions possibly such as the team's meetings. We haven't discussed it. It was just a provision put in that we are possibly short-staffed up front on the administrative side and needing some assistance with some of the items that are required to be completed over the next little while so that we're not wearing staff too thin. So it's a part-time position that we've put in an allowance for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Going to Paul Clark now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to further on to Councillor Butter's question about linear taxes. How much are we exposed if there was let's say a 50% cut in linear taxes, in our ability to collect linear taxes?
I don't understand by exposed. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I'm asking, it's kind of almost a sensitivity analysis, is if we went into this budget year and had to say that we 50% of our budget would 50% of our taxes that we normally get on linear would disappear, what effect would that be on the tax increase?
The worst case scenario from the data that is speculated, it isn't confirmed, was, I believe, a 48% cut to oil and gas linear. That would translate to approximately 400 to 500,000 in property tax revenue from non-residential taxation. That amount could be absorbed potentially with adjusting our reserve contribution that is outlined on page 22. And an increase to taxes as well would assist in offsetting that, but it wouldn't need to be a sharp increase. We actually reduced taxes in 2020. We reduced the mill rate. We haven't had a tax rate increase since, I believe, 2013 or 14. So we are due for a tax rate increase potentially. But again, I can't speculate on this without having an announcement from the province. So it's it's what ifs. We have an allowance in our budget that will help absorb it being a sudden shock to our ratepayers, and we wouldn't necessarily have to forecast a substantial increase in our non-residential and residential tax rates to help offset any decreases potentially coming forward from the provincial.
Thanks, Shane. That I think you got to thank you that we're not. I think what you're saying is we're not really all that vulnerable.
No,
we can absorb a lot of that.
We can absorb it in a way that is not going to be shocking to our ratepayers and adjust for it over time. So.
Thank you. Great. That's good news.
I think linear taxation is a difficult one for the public. I will provide the following background information, and please correct me, Shayna, if I'm in error. But our total linear taxation is just under $1 million a year.
Yes.
And it comes from many different kinds of taxation, one of which is oil and gas.
Yes.
So about half of our linear taxation isn't being challenged at this point.
At this point.
Yeah. The other one is a proposal by the government of Alberta, but they haven't provided any certainties. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it might occur, might not occur. We wouldn't know at this point, and they haven't told us at this point. The last thing I want to bring out with regards to linear taxation is we're talking about canceling linear taxation for 1 year. If it was canceled for 2 or 3 or 4 years in a row, would that be much more challenging than for 1 year?
From what I can see in our budget at this point, it will not be critically challenging to the municipality.
Okay.
Based on the way that our budgets have been put together. It will be challenging. It will also depend on other things like changes to grant funding. We don't know what we don't know. So that's it's a difficult question to forecast because we don't know what other changes are coming forward.
You were very clear on this budget being about the certainties that are presenting themselves, not the possibilities that are presenting themselves.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else at this point? Lisa?
Thanks, Shayna. I'm curious about the line items that have a negative percentage change from 2020. So there's 3 of them. Would you be able to talk about the disaster services first?
So in 2020, we had believe there was a large project with a considerable amount of staff training that was supposed to occur, and it is not carried forward into the 2021 budget. So that's typically where you see those decreases or the negative percentages, is where we had a program planned for a single year, and then they don't occur again in the subsequent year. So there's expenses that just don't carry forward, and then you do an adjustment to bring that down.
Okay.
Same with the roads department. The programs fluctuate from year to year that they do, and therefore the expenses involved with them fluctuate. So again, you'll see a decrease there. And then with the planning department in 2020, we had budgeted for an additional employee, as well as we had building permits in the budget. And it has been determined at this point that that employee will not be required, that we have sufficient staffing. And that has come out of the budget, as well as anything with the expenses related to building permits, as well as an adjustment for any revenue related to building permits.
I guess that raises an interesting point to me, because I would have expected this number to be, the negative number to be higher. Because we are now, our residents have to outsource their own building permits, and we no longer are paying for building permit inspections. When we went through that process, we determined it would be at a substantial savings if we outsourced that service.
Well, in addition, there's also been an increase in planning's anticipated legal fees. So that would offset some changes. And then Jared can speak to this if I'm wrong, but I believe that there are still some expenses pertaining to the building permits as we clean up the ones that the MD had outstanding. Jared could add detail if I missed something or misspoke.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, Jared.
Yeah, good morning.
Hi. Yeah, I would echo Shayna's comments as far as the building services. There are some continued expenses moving forward, just wrapping up some of the existing building permits that we were dealing with. And then also, in addition to everything that Shayna has said, I would also say that we are anticipating some decrease in revenue just due to the economy regarding some subdivision applications as well as land use applications. So I've tried to reflect that in some of the details of the planning budget for moving forward to 2021. And largely that's just a reflection of the economy. We have in 2020, we've experienced an increase in development permit applications actually, but a decrease in subdivision and land use applications. So, yeah.
So I guess my question is, at what point do we start to see a savings? Because when you look at the 2022 projection and 2023 projection, it doesn't look as though we're seeing a significant savings since discontinuing the building permit process through the MD.
I haven't done adjustments to the 22 and 23 projections, as that we were focusing right now on the 2021, just with COVID and a number of unknowns. So there's just a factor to increase slightly over the next few years. So I haven't put in any solid projections for those future years. Those projections were what was projected last year prior to the changes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll be interested to see how how those changes do affect our future budgets, because that's what I was expecting.
Yeah, we're going to need to wait until we have, I would suggest waiting until we have a solid year of not having that service in our actuals to be able to accurately start forecasting what those decreases are going to look like in the budget going forward.
Okay.
Shayna, just on that last question, it seems to me that in the past, I'm talking 5 and 10 year horizons now, we've had some very large industrial applications come forward, and the cost of development services isn't just tied to residential or light industrial. It's also covered in the past larger projects, and those tended to support our costs a little better than the residential costs actually do. So you have to take into consideration everything that was going on in the last 5 years, not just look at it from the residential viewpoint. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Jared, would you say that's fair?
Yes, I would say that's an accurate statement.
Okay. I think it was a very good question, Lisa, and I appreciate your question.
Thank you.
Need to be asked. I don't know if you want in, Eric, or not. Your little sign keeps enlarging and then going back to normal. Are you there?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, maybe just one last quick question. The Canmore Rec costs are in Parks and Rec, are they?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Paul Ryan. Your microphone's off, Paul.
How's that?
Ah,
So
there you go.
I'm looking at our community services going up by about 3% or $9,000 a year. But we're over 300,000 now for community services. And so if someone said to me, what am I getting for that money? Can you tell me what we get for $300,000 in community services?
Can I bring that response forward to the next presentation?
That's Jared's department, I think. Jared, can you enlighten us? Okay.
Hello,
wait.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I would also like to bring the details of that forward to the next presentation. I believe it's a change in some of the grant funding due to the provincial changes that have come forward this year. But again, I don't have the details of that, so I'd like to defer that answer to that question to the next meeting.
Sure, then, Shane, if you can just break out that line item, because it will have a bunch of subsets in it, and that would be fine.
Jared, are you talking about FCSS grants or something other than that?
No, I was thinking FCSS because there was.
They're quite substantial, actually.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't want to answer the details because I would get lost.
I appreciate your need to be correct, because once noise gets into the conversation, it's very hard to clean up. So you will always be provided the ability to get the detail. I don't see anybody holding you back from that. And Shayna bringing it forward in the next round, I think would satisfy Paul Ryan. Am I correct?
I'm guessing it would satisfy anybody that was wondering what we got for 300,000.
Yeah, I think it's a
Including
good question.
Me.
Needs to, yeah. Okay.
So through the chair,
yeah.
for that next for that line item as well. I'll break out a detail. Usually the draft 1 is more of a summary presentation to get the discussion started. And then our draft 2, this is where I am able to discover where the committee would like to see more detail. So it can definitely be a far more detailed presentation, and we can go through departments and their individual increases on a more separate basis in a more detailed report for that draft too. So this is a good discussion on where to break out those items for you.
Lisa, your microphone is off. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. I guess I've got a bit of a philosophical opinion, but if we're not going to be actually looking at the 2022 and 2023 projections, why are they on this spreadsheet? Because like it appears as though some of them are maybe being projected, but like if you look at operations permitting in 2022, it's at 100,000. In 2023, it's more than double. So like if these are not accurate at all, then should they not be included?
They're the projections that were included in last year's budget. So that is where those numbers came from. So some of the changes have occurred this year, and they haven't been reflected in that budget. If we decide to go forward with just a one-year budget presentation, you'll just see a comparison of 2020 and 2021, and then you'll see the projections for capital only going forward. Okay. I just need to know if council is or if the committee is in agreement to move forward with a one-year budget at this time, rather than a normal 1 year plus projections. So I need to know where the committee would like to go before I ask for.
Do you know what is required of the MGA? Do we just
need to approve the 1 year.
Okay.
Multi-year budgets are an option that municipalities are allowed to approve. However, with the pandemic and the potential changes in grant funding and the potential changes with the linear assessment, at this time, until we know what is going to be occurring with the linear especially, I'm uncomfortable with projecting a 2 or 3 year operating budget, because if there is a substantial change to our linear assessment or even to our residential assessment, going forward, it could reflect as substantial changes for 22 and 23 on our operating budget, and really having to take a look at our capital budget with respect to needs and wants, or needs versus wants. So
do you know if other municipalities are mostly doing a 1 year capital budget?
I've heard rumors. I haven't polled GFOA or anything to see what others are doing, but I've heard that 1 year is quite popular this year with the pandemic and potential changes coming forward.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Roswell, that would be administration's recommendation, is just to have the 1 year budget for 2021.
Okay.
There are just too many unknowns right now.
Really good questions. Thank you for the questions and answers. Paul Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very much of an advocate of an extended period, so 3 to 4 year period of projecting budgets, even though those numbers may be shots in the dark, but it does give you an idea if you're going to get some spikes or exposures or anything like that. Uncover. I guess it's a. I know it's not an accurate view, but it's an indicator. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Does administration want to respond to that, or?
through the chair, we would still recommend this the 1 year. If you're going out and trying to, using a lot of what if scenarios, I think we're going to be wasting our time. Seriously.
All right. Eric, any questions?
None at this time, thank you.
Paul, Ryan? No? Lisa, any questions at this point?
Not right now, thank you.
I have a couple, but when we get there. And Paul Clark, any questions at this point?
Yeah, I want to respond to Rob's point, and just to be clear, when we bring this budget forward, I'm fine with just budget with approving a 1 year budget, but having projections forward and not necessarily approving those budgets. And I understand what you're saying is that there's so many variables and unknowns at this point in time. But my experience in business was always like that. So I would still, I'm fine with approving a 1 year budget and not trying to detail out the next 3 years after that, because as you say, it's probably a big waste of time. But I'd be fine with what is presented already and no additional work required.
I actually think we are in agreement in a strange way, that we understand that going past this year introduces less and less reliability and confidence in the figures being presented. I think we also agree that this year is a very special year, and we need to get the figures and facts that affect this budget very, very correct. So I think we're going to focus on this budget, and we're going to work on other details as they become time and this budget becomes firmed up. My questions are very simple. I'm looking at the future, and I see policing costs coming into effect, possibly. Those policing costs start about $60,000 a year and then ramp up to about $180,000 a year several years from now. Would that be approximately correct, Shayna, or would you correct those figures?
I believe that is approximately correct based on some of the documentation that I've seen so far. 2021 is, believe, about 67,000, and that it increases incrementally over the next several years until we get to our full requisition. That will be presented as a requisition to the ratepayer, however.
Okay. The next one I'm coming to is the linear taxation, which I think you've covered very well. Of the four possibilities that are suggested at this point, the cost would be $400,000 a year to $500,000 a year, approximately.
Approximately.
Yeah. But collectively, these things add up. Recreation costs are not determined yet. They have been in the vicinity of $50,000 a year. No one expects that they will be there in the future. So again, year-on-year costs, we could see something over $50,000 as possible costs going forward. Would that be a fair assessment of costs at this point?
Yes.
Okay. And the last one I didn't see is Jura Creek Phase 2, which is before government for funding and as a shovel-ready project. But I didn't see any costs for Jura Creek in this budget.
Yes, that is correct. I was still researching where it had appeared in our budget in the past. I've discovered that there was an approved line item in our 2018 budget that had a tax allocation collected toward it, and I am still working on putting together some data regarding other grant funding that I have available to us before I incorporate that line item into the budget, and you'll be seeing that come forward in your draft 2 presentation.
I think my reason for asking the question is so the public would know that we have not dropped the importance of Jura Creek Phase 2 going forward. We've budgeted for it in the past. A government change in funding basically removed the budget from which it would normally have occurred, and we're now pursuing second alternate routes in order to bring that project forward. But thank you for looking in the past and continuing with that. If you look at all of these costs, the future isn't an easy one. So when you add those up, there's $1 million in costs or more. So I think that budgeting this year is possible. I think the budgeting in future years will require at least as much work and as much care as we are taking this year, and it may be even requiring more attention. But Paul Ryan, what would you have to say?
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. So just in terms of why are we only doing a 1 year instead of 2 to 3? A lot of fiscal managers like the idea of forecasting out beyond your immediate need to give you an idea of what's coming down the pipe. And I think when we look at our capital budget, because I'm just still on operations here, those points you just made are very relative. But I think that what we're struggling with here, and Shane is struggling with it, I think more than any of us at this point in time, is that the province knows very well that all of the municipalities are now in their budget deliberations. Matter of fact, they made it a part of the Municipal Government Act to require us to be doing this. We are in the process of doing it. However, there's a considerable lack of information coming from the province that to inform our finance managers on what to expect. So it's impossible for Shana to be accurate. It's really easy to be inaccurate and us have to open up the budget again in 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. I can see the big deep breath Shana's taken there, because you're trying to calculate everything and you have absolutely no indication from the province how we're going to be affected by their changes in the distribution of provincial wealth. So a lot of municipalities, and I'm down south a fair bit talking to municipalities with the Energy from Waste project, and I talk to the councillors about the same things that are going on down there that are going here. And I think you're all in the same boat, Shana, and I think you're doing a great job of trying to give us forecasts when there's so much uncertainty out there and what we're going to be getting from the province and what our revenue shortfalls are going to be. So that's my take on why we're only doing 1 year operating budget. Capital, of course, we can do as long as we want.
We can do the 5-year capital, yes.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
My comment, Mr. Chair.
That's received. Paul Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My experience is that anytime there's a tax increase and people look at the bottom line generally, and it all comes back to what is the MD doing? And so my question is related to not anything related to the MD, but related to the education tax. I understand that in previous conversation that some of that education tax, or a large amount of that, was going to be passed on to the municipalities. Any comments on that?
I have not heard anything. As far as I know, the education tax is still and will still remain a requisition that it comes from the province. And our job as a municipality is simply to collect that requisition and then forward our quarterly payments to the province to pay back the invoice that they've requisitioned us for. I haven't heard of any changes whatsoever to that program as far as the collection of the requisition goes.
No, I understand what you're saying is that, but I thought I heard that there was going to be a significant increase in those taxes that we would pass through to the taxpayer. And you're saying you haven't heard it.
Well, the increases, if there are increases, again, it's a requisition and we have no power or control over what that amount is. It comes forward from the province and all we can do is allocate it to the taxpayer, right down to what we have to collect as a non-residential portion and as a residential portion. So if they shift their allocation or calculations. It is something that our hands are completely tied on that. We have no voice in how that is collected. Or what
Right,
the
I
dollar
understand.
amount that is collected.
Okay.
Eric?
Done for now.
Okay. Then I think that we have discussed the budget in detail. Very good questions, very good answers, some information coming to us about this. And the motion that is required for this is receive it as information.
Mr. Chairman,
Are we just talking capital budget here now?
We're just talking
Or operating budget?
operating budget
Pardon
right
me.
now. Or are we going to have
Okay.
one motion for all of it?
I think we could do this in two motions, one at the very end of the discussion. If we look back to the decision report, we could request, we could do a motion at the end for administration to work on the amendments as requested from the committee, and then we can do a motion that the committee accepts the draft as information. Is that correct, Rob?
Yes, it is. You can
So-
do both motions at the end. That allows you to go back and forth and still have discussions about operating and capital.
So it's not a draft approve, it's drafts, plural approve.
There will be drafts over
Yes.
time, yes.
So we're not doing individual reports, we're doing the package.
The package is your draft budget.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on to
Or-
reserves now, reserve budget.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is on page 22.
Yes.
I will draw your attention if I could. Is everybody there at that page? Okay. To the line item that states general contribution to capital reserves.
Yes.
So you'll see over the next 3 years, there's a contribution for 2021. It's anticipated at 499,000, and then 277,000, 182,000 out to 2023. That line item is the one where we can edit or modify the amount that goes into that as a buffer, so to speak, for any potential decreases that may come forward in our assessment values in general. So that is an extra allocation that gets split up as per policy F16.
Okay. Don't know who was first, who was second, or who was third, but Lisa, you have the floor.
Thank you. So is that where we could find what was, I guess, at one point called the tax stabilization fund?
No, we do not make tax revenue does not get collected and put into the tax rate stabilization fund. That
Okay.
increases just based on the interest earned on our investments. The tax rate stabilization fund was created years ago, I believe, when there was a change in the education tax. Dean, you and I have discussed where
Tax
that fund came.
stabilization fund was the result of a legal action that put a certain amount of money into that from an unfortunate municipal embezzlement, basically. So a
Okay.
tax settlement came forward, and that's what populated, I think, well drilling tax may have gone into it as well.
Yes. We haven't collected a well drilling tax since 2013 either. That fund can also be used to help offset any type of substantial tax increase that is presented at the time of passing your tax rate bylaw. So by that point, we would know what the changes are to our assessments, and if it was absolutely necessary, we could draw from that tax rate stabilization fund to help offset substantial increases to the residential ratepayer.
Thank you for that. I guess that answers that part of the question, but I guess it leads me to still question. I don't know if I understand fully then what this general contribution to capital reserves is.
So it's essentially it's a surplus allocation to the reserve accounts for us to not have had a decrease to our mill rate. So we've added this line, and it gets prorated based on the policy at the end of the year, so that we don't have, we were facing a substantial decrease at one point. And to avoid decreasing the mill rate, this line item came to be to allocate those to keep our budget at the same amount. So that $6.4 million, $6.3 million range, that line item came to be to allocate that difference into the reserve account. So it gets split into our, I believe it goes into the vehicle and road and bridge reserves as per policy.
So this is essentially like a planned surplus?
Yes.
Huh. Okay.
Which will be helpful to us going forward if there is a sudden and drastic decrease to a large portion of our assessed values.
And then when you say this is kind of the extra, I can't remember what word you say, but of like the extra
planned
money.
Surplus is a good word.
Okay. Or surplus, like this is where we could take money out of this contribution and add it to other reserves. Should council see fit, or?
I would have to look at the policy again, because it's a policy driven allocation. So,
but if we don't allocate it yet, like if there's 400...
well, the allocation of it is as per policy F16. So it gets allocated the way surplus is allocated. So I would have to pull the policy.
So that's the allocation of surplus operating fund. Is that what it would be called?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Eric, I can't see your hand, so I'm going to you next.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been struggling with the same thing as Lisa has, and you know, the huge, 240 to 500,000. I just assume that we have bigger surpluses than we contemplated, or did we contemplate that big a jump for this year only?
We've had this line item in the budget since 2018. It fluctuates from year to year depending on the capital projects coming forward and the tax requirement that we have, and not projecting decreases in mill rates. So I'm not sure exactly how to answer this specifically at this time, but I can try.
Suffice to say, it's money in the bank anyway, so should be happy about that.
It's a surplus that is incorporated into the budget prior to receiving the assessed values and knowing what our assessment is going to be It's just taking the current year's assessment and then applying it to the mill rates. And then if that changes, it's just better than having an unbudgeted surplus.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Paul Ryan.
Thank you. So one of the things that there's sensitivity around is municipalities that budget for a surplus, because taxpayers are very concerned when municipalities are budgeting to create a surplus. However, what I'm seeing here, and Shana helped me out with it, is that you are budgeting for a revenue shortfall. In other words, there's a lot of unknowns out there, and what you're doing, it would be considered to be fiscally prudent in that you don't know what you don't know, but you know something is going to happen. And then there are going to be reductions. And so what you're doing here is you're creating or you're increasing contributions to a fund that will allow us to then draw down from that to open our budget in 2021 and make adjustments. Would that be a fair way to state that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was clear because it was getting a little bit confused around why that was doubling for 2021.
Yes.
Well put, Paul. Thank you for that. Anything more, Paul?
Not from me, no.
Paul Clark.
Thank you. We've had discussions in the past, and I believe that Councillor Butters introduced this, the new, and I think Council agreed that we would have another reserve fund, and it would be road upgrades. And I don't see it here. Would that be on the road reserve?
I believe that it's always been part of the road reserve. I would have to go back through past discussions. I don't recall the request to set up a separate reserve. I know that the discussion has always been to ensure that we have a sufficient reserve contribution to ensure that those road upgrades can occur. Bill, is that correct?
I think it's correct, but there's still a greater discussion of what those road upgrades would detail. So we could populate the reserve.
Okay. That would be a discussion with roads and the roads committee, right?
That's correct. That's the first vetting.
Mr. Chair, I don't think that, so the roads committee, what happens is administration brings forward a schedule of what roads need what and when it needs it. The roads committee does not really decide what gets upgraded and what doesn't get upgraded. It comes through in the Public Works Road Rehabilitation Plan, which has a schedule of when it happens, how much it's going to cost, and where the money comes from. Would that be a fair way to state that?
I think the question is of you, Bill.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Currently, road rehabilitation right now is set up for basically pavement rehabilitation. But we can certainly have that discussion at our next Streets and Roads meeting. What are the upgrade projects? We haven't really finalized any or identified any at this point right now.
But Streets and Roads does not make any decisions. Streets and Roads only refers stuff to council.
That's correct.
Yes.
Through the chair to Councillor Clark, I've got F16 open right now. What was your original question about creating an account within that policy?
Well, my understanding was it would be a separate reserve that we would have one for rehabilitation and one for upgrades. The distinction is that one is for an existing road and um, an existing road just getting it to a higher level.
Well, just looking at it right now, it says the purpose of the roads reserve account is to utilize funds for the upgrade of roads and MD's road network systems. That's a pretty broad item for reserve.
Yeah, that's
going
got
into
it.
that account.
That's perfect. That's got it. Thank you.
Okay. Lisa, I don't know if you're on a new one or this question.
Just to add to that, further in the policy, there is a road upgrade policy, P1 reserve account. I think that is what Councillor Clark is referring to. And that says the road upgrade policy P1 reserve account is pursuant to planning policy P1 and was set up to recover costs for the development of municipal road along the northern edge. There's a whole bunch of different lot numbers there. I don't know, is that what you were talking about, Councillor Clark, or?
Oh, I think Rob answered the question. The policy
Okay.
does include upgrades to existing roads.
I guess I'm not sure why we have other reserve account in our policy then.
Because
Okay,
I think that account is for very specific properties.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could you call a 10-minute break or a 5-minute break?
I sure can. We'll have a 5-minute break. Right now it is what time?
I have 10:31.
I have
10:31.
10:35.
We will be back at 10:40.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not at this point, just I can respond to any further questions.
I'm still
Okay, there's an opportunity for further questions. Not hearing
Just a
any.
clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Clarification.
Yeah,
So when we were talking about approving a 1-year budget or a 5-year budget, I am fine with presenting. I just want to be clear with the 1-year budget in the detail that we're doing right now, and just having the next 3 years for our information, and not having that part of the budget. If that's what people think is the right thing to do. That's what I heard from administration.
okay, administration want to respond to that? Might be you, Rob? No, sound. Mic's off.
Through the chair to Councillor Clark. I think we have to be just cognizant of the time commitment that would be required for putting that together. I know you want to have a separate one. I guess we would be blue skying as to what we think, particularly what the M&E and oil and gas linear will be. We don't know. Obviously, we've never been in a pandemic before, so it's got other impacts. So for sure, we'll just have the one-year budget to be approved by council. So just to clarify, are you then looking us to just provide something another 2 years to just show it separate from the budget? So for your information.
I think what I'm saying, Rob, is that I've got all the information that we need right now, and Shayna has done the best job she can in predicting what's moving forward. And what I was concerned about is that is there anything that's going to jump out at us? And of course, we don't know that. But I'm fine with it as it is in proceeding with just approving a 1-year budget. So no extra work required.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Lisa? Oh, yep.
Sheena, I was wondering if there's a way to present this the next time we meet to discuss the budget, where we can have a look at what these current reserves are, or what these reserves are currently sitting at, and what the maximum is for these reserves.
I can include more reserve detail.
That would be great. And I don't know if I'm just curious to know, like, I know we've got other reserves that aren't included in this list that don't get an annual contribution. But it might be good to refresh our committee here with that information as well.
Okay.
Bill, Luca, do you have a question?
Oh, no, I do not.
Okay, I just saw your initials blinking here. So Paul Ryan.
Yeah, so I think what Lisa's looking for there is that we have a report on our reserves, current balance, maximum balance, minimum balance also is part of the reserves policy. And then the inflows and outflows, as well as the formula that's used to allocate to those. So Shayna, is that what you will be providing us?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, and that is a living document, if I'm not mistaken.
Generally speaking, yes.
We've had that kind of detail in the past, Lisa. I'm not sure in your 2 years, but we've seen it in the past. So it has been necessary before your question.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's great, and that's why I would like to see it again.
Okay, good. So I'm moving on now, if we can, and we're heading into draft capital budget now. Shayna, is that where you need to go?
Yes.
Okay.
So our capital budget incorporates the purchase of equipment, infrastructure. It also incorporates studies and reviews, and then large-scale improvements for the municipality. For 2021, I'll note that there are several new proposed requirements, as well as the ones that we had reviewed and discussed last year. There's also been some increases just in light of either inflation or general supplier pricing increases. So we've done our best to make these projections as accurate as possible, especially for those really big ticket items like fire trucks and whatnot. So I will just open the floor to questions, and I will ask for assistance from the other directors with respect to answering questions that I may not be able to speak to.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Shayna, I've got questions on a couple of different pages. So would it work for you if I just went down through them and got my questions out? And if you don't have answers for them, then of course I can wait till the next one. Does that work, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay. So my first one is on page 24. And I see that we've got a line item in there for 2021 for vehicle extraction equipment for Jameson. That same item appears in the 2024 capital budget as vehicle extraction equipment for Jameson. Is that a typo, or are we buying some in 2021 and then buying more in 2024?
I believe that was part of their 5-year plan last year, was to buy some in 21, and then okay, as the other existing stuff that they have now ages out, then it would be replaced in 24. Okay.
I just didn't know if it was a typo or not. Okay, so going down the page, because we got a lot of new stuff here. I see new playground rehabilitation, $43,000. I see new Trans-Canada Trail deficiencies. Why are we even having that trail? And then rehabilitation of Municipal Reserve Trail between RB and LV. I'm not sure what that is. I think I know what it is. And then a legal review of trails and playgrounds policy, which is all new. And so I'm going to chime in with Councillor Butters here, because what we're seeing here now, to me, looks like a serious creep in cost related to parks. And it's all over the place, and we've got parks lumped in with agriculture. So, and I know that there is an election next year, and the potential to have a bunch of new councillors is there. And I'm just wondering, and I know I asked this question in the past, in order to help with succession planning and also clarify some of the costs around these things, is for us to do a cost of services review. I know some partial work was done a while ago. I know we do have a contractor that works for us in another area whose qualifications would be ideal to do that cost of services review, because we've got a lot of budget creep going on here when it comes to parks, and I think it's the right time for us to do it, to figure out what it's costing us to maintain the different things that we do. Because we've also got grass cutting, you've got waste management removal, snow clearing in different areas, because you got some places got trails being cleared. And also it looks like we're now doing a bunch of stormwater management work in some areas. Well, we have undone storm management work in other areas. So I think it's going to raise a lot of questions about the cost of services and how we pay for these things. So I'd like to hear the rest of council's thoughts on that.
So is your question about the individual items, Paul?
Well, I can ask the same question about each individual one. What I don't see in this budget anywhere in the capital budget is to actually go out and find out what those costs are, because the capital budget actually is the place where you put things like that.
Okay. So do you need Shana to come back with a list of these items that you've mentioned with the specific need and location of each of those expenditures?
Yes. And I'd also, once again, like to ask council to consider, because this is where we do it, right? This is where you look at your capital budget and council makes amendments to the capital budget. And I would like council to consider putting a line item in there to do a cost of services review, so that we don't do this every single year.
Okay. So I hope councillors have got that around. And Paul Clark, your hand's up first.
I'm sorry, I was wanting to ask a question, but are you asking me to respond to Councillor Ryan's suggestion?
Only if you choose to.
I think it's a great idea. I think it would be very interesting to understand what where we're going here, and so that review I suggest would require, first of all, an understanding of the endpoint of all of this parks and recreation, and I know there's some certainly a request. I think I don't know if I call it a request or a very big interest in improving recreation in Deadman's Flats area. So I'm not sure where that's going. So anyway, I agree.
Okay.
Should be.
I've got. Thank you. I don't know if Eric wants in on that.
Not so much that particular topic. I have some questions about the 21 capital budget when we get there.
Okay, Lisa. Lisa?
I see the value in doing a review of cost of services. I guess my apprehension, though, is being able to clearly identify what services we're talking about. It can't just be those 4 things that are listed as parks, because there's different like snow clearing, and then different things with roads as well that are providing services. I don't know.
I did bring those up.
I didn't hear you say roads.
Okay, yeah, no, what I said was garbage, snow clearing, and stormwater management.
So what is your definition of services then?
Well, we provide services to our residents. So snow clearing is a service, sidewalk clearing is a service, waste management is a service, plowing the roads is a service. And I think if council is in agreement to go ahead and do it, then the scope of work can be identified at that time to have a.
You're breaking up, Paul.
List. I'm sorry.
Can't hear you.
That's my internet connection. I hope it's my internet connection.
I think it's actually Teams, because he's frozen right now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there is actually examples of cost of services studies that have been done by other municipalities, and I think that might be a good place for us to start. But the first step in a very long journey is the most important one, because it gets it started. So what I'm asking council to do is consider it on here as a line item for 2021, because it won't be completed until you get your new council in 2022, but nonetheless, I'm asking to get it started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see the value in that, and as long as we are council is in agreement in terms of what services are being reviewed, I would support that review.
I would suggest, Lisa, that would take place at the time. If we can line item it, then the terms of reference for that study would be something that council would have to agree on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any feeling for the scope in terms of dollars for that?
Shayna, do you remember what Red Deer's was? Was it 75,000?
I'd have to look back. I can't remember what it was. I would think a municipality our size, maybe 50,000. I'm not sure.
50 sounds about right.
Yeah, it's a good placeholder. And then the terms of reference need to be fleshed out by council before it goes forward anyway. It's just that it gets it on the ledger. Did we lose Dean?
I think we lost Dean.
Yes, can we just hang on for one moment? Sorry.
Yep. This is a good time for us to vote on that, though, if he's gone. I'm only kidding, you know that.
Should I go in technical difficulties now?
Sometimes I forget we're being recorded.
Yeah, you betcha. Ridiculous.
Term to ensure that it exists for the next council. And that way it doesn't risk getting bumped off because someone doesn't understand what it's about.
Yeah.
Succession planning is what I have in mind. Because not a lot of councillors understand what the history behind a lot of these things. I certainly do. And I know we've talked about this in the past. Many municipalities do it to look at their cost of providing services. No different than any business would actually look at their cost of producing a product and what they get in return for it.
Okay.
Shana, I have a quick question while we're waiting. I don't know. I'm just curious. Beside project costs, the next column is carried forward. What does that mean?
It means a portion of the funds were allocated in the 2020 year, and through discussion, it was just wanted to be shown that those specific projects were being carried forward into the next year, or the funding for them was being carried forward. So the tax dollars are already collected for those projects.
Okay. So does that happen all the time? Like if there's a project that is part of our capital budget and it's not actually completed in the year that it's funded, does that money stay or earmarked for that project?
Yes.
It stays
well,
in the
it
bank?
depends. If the project is not going to go forward, then it just stays in reserves.
Yeah.
And if it's collected as a tax revenue and then not used for that project or only partially allocated, it goes into the reserves. And then we just fund the remaining balance of the project through the reserve account. These ones, I believe, were projects that did not start. So we're carrying the whole project forward rather than something that started and has become a work in progress. Which is usually what happens throughout a year. So normally we have projects, they start and then they don't finish, but we just continue carrying it forward in the background. But these two specific ones this year were not started, and the funds are sitting in reserves or will be sitting in reserves.
So if there's a project that was funded in a previous year and never got started, like, should it always be getting carried over if that money is still? being saved for that project?
The
or-
money's still saved and they are carried forward. We just don't always present it. I was asked by the department heads in this case to carry them forward visually on the budget.
Mhm.
I don't always visually carry forward projects though. But these
An
ones were
example of that.
specifically requested.
An example of that, Lisa, is that the fire truck for Jameson, it was originally in the 1999 or 2000 budget,
Mhm.
and then it was evaluated. It was a full-blown business case, and the funds weren't sufficient for the truck that was recommended. So council passed the recommendation to carry that over and add additional funds to it for the 2020 budget, and that's being built right now. The danger of not carrying some of these over is that you don't want to be in those areas where, I'm sure you've heard of it, is that if you don't spend it, you lose it. And what happens is there's a big rush at the end of the year to spend as much money as they have allocated in the budget, because otherwise they'll lose it. So I think that's a great policy.
Well, I guess where I was going with this too is I would be interested in seeing more projects that are being carried forward. Now that I know that that's a possibility to see as part of the budget, but I know there's been projects that haven't happened in the past that were budgeted for, and I guess this is a good snapshot for council and our committee to see where we're at with those projects that have already been previously funded.
Comments, Shana?
No, I'm just making a note to
Okay.
provide a summary of carry forward projects. It's not a difficult
Okay.
exercise, I don't believe. So again, this is where we're going through and trying to find where we need to provide more detail going forward. So I see that Dean is back.
Yes, I don't know what happened, folks. It was a long trip. At the
They
speed of
didn't
light.
take your appendix out while you were gone, did they?
What's that?
They didn't take your appendix out while you were gone?
Oh, no. Might improve my disposition, though. Yeah.
So Dean, what you missed was the wind up on my request to have a placeholder put in the 21 capital budget to do a cost of services review. And that the terms of reference and what it actually covers would have to be dealt with at the time, but it's just to get it on there so that it is initiated in this term of council with the assurance that it'll be completed by the first year of a new council.
Just hold on, I got phone calls. I don't know who it is. They're dealt with now, too. All right, so cost of services is a big question, and it takes a lot of time. It could drag us to difficult places. So while I don't know how a decision was made in my absence, was a motion made?
Well, no decision was made, Dean.
Yeah.
What it was a discussion about, it's been done by other municipalities, and that we are seeing a creep almost up to $100,000 here for playgrounds and trails. And I think it'd be very prudent for us to look at our cost of services. We can just decide what services we look at when the terms of reference is developed, because it won't move forward without a separate council approval. But this will be a placeholder to get it on there as part of succession planning, so that it helps understand what we are paying for and how we pay for it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Dean?
Yes? Yeah.
I see a number of advantages to this cost of service thing, but we've had it surface before, and it generally in a threatening way. Generally, we'll do a cost of service, and we'll show you how lucky you are. And if we can do this in a non-threatening way, I would be more willing to support it. But our wards, in many respects, are very different, and it depends what's in the scope and what emphasis we put on certain services could skew the way this thing comes out.
Okay. In my absence, did administration make any comments?
Yes, we did.
Can you repeat them, please?
I pointed out that you'd be making decisions based on 2021, where most of the new items are located, obviously, for the 2021 capital budget. And going into the following years, 22, 23, 24, there are not very many items in there at all.
Okay. I'm not, Lisa, can you tell me where you're at on this?
I was also saying that I was supportive of a review. However, the list of services needs to be complete and comprehensive before a review is taking place.
All right.
Can I add something to that, Cooper? I think it'd be good when we come back for the next go round that we will have, admin will take a real hard look at these items, but I think bring back more explanations. I mean, Councillor Ryan has put sort of a list down of things he has questions about. I think it's to come back with that information to really to give a rationale for why those projects are on the list.
So, Mr. Chair, for clarity, I wasn't trying to write a terms of reference for doing a cost of services review. I was trying to get it into the 2021 capital budget so that we can start moving in that direction.
Okay. Through the chair, I'm not debating what you've said. I'm just saying that we'll come back with more information for you because you're going to have to make a decision on the 2021 capital items.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, Mr. Chair, can I just carry on my questions then, and I'll leave that for administration to bring back?
Yes, I think I covered all the councillors in my absence. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so where I left off was playground rehabilitation for $43,000, Trans-Canada Trail for $12,000, other trail rehabilitation and legal reviews and things like that. So we're creeping up on 100. So I think, my understanding, Shana, you were going to bring back an explanation for those for the next go round.
Yes, I'll request that from the department heads.
Okay, and then the other one is that we got $170,000 in here for the Beaver Valley Pit reclamation. Will someone tell me where the Beaver Valley Pit is? I don't recognize that name.
Bill?
Mr. Luca?
Where is that?
The Beaver Valley Pit is oddly enough on Burnt Timber Road, and it's a pit we haven't used. And that we've been preparing to reclaim and get that liability off our books too.
We were in there on the tour, weren't we? Last summer.
We stopped at the entrances, I think, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been in there. Okay, my next one, Shana, is it's hard to see page numbers down here. Page 26. And then I see playground rehabilitation assessment every 5 years for $6,000. So we did one in 2020. That should be in the 2025 capital year, not the 2024 capital year. Because we do it every 5 years. This will be doing it in the 4th year. Just an observation. Then the Exshaw Windridge sidewalk rehab for $12,500. What is that? Like a couple of 50 feet of sidewalk or something? Do we know what that is? In 2024?
It would be the same thing that we've done here. It would be our worst pieces of sidewalks on those blocks as we start to develop our sidewalk rehabilitation program.
So liability issues then, is that what I would note that as?
Yes.
Okay. The other one is that we've got a bunch of stormwater work scheduled in 2025. It's not an insignificant amount of money. Are there stormwater reports for those that are recommending those changes and improvements?
Those reports will be prepared. They're being carried forward as well before we move forward with any of those improvements. So those are just placeholders right now.
Oh, okay. So then, okay. That's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think I started with Paul, so I'll go around the room, but Paul Clark, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at the. Let me just give you some context. I'm very supportive of the expenditures on roads and fire, because those are the big issues out here. And but there is and Rob, maybe you can help me on this. The communication trailer. Oh, sorry. No, the RFX radio system, handheld radios.
Mm-hmm.
So we had 105,000 carried forward, and now we are requesting another 93,000. Is that going to be the end of it? Is that all of the radios we need?
No, because if you go into, I don't know, if you go into 2022, there's $93,000 also in there. So the AFRAX is a very expensive piece of equipment, but since all of the RCMP and other fire departments are all moving over to that system, it's an expensive system, but one we hope that will last for a very long time and not be supplanted by another new technology.
Right, and the RCMP are on that system as well.
I believe they are. Shana, was there something here that you were going to move around before? Just the question about this.
Rick and I had a discussion, and with the radio system, it was proposed through the EMS committee to implement this program over 3 years because it is extremely costly. It's a $300,000 program, approximately. So we had said, well, we'll spread it over 3 years so that we can buy a few radios each year, and then year 3, everybody will be converted over. This is very difficult to do with radio systems because then you're using a dual system. You're using your current radio system, and then when you get in the truck, you're switching over to the AFRAX system. And then some people have AFRAX, some people don't. And it's very difficult to operate your fire response services when you've got your duty officers or your on-call volunteers walking around having to make sure that they're maintaining 2 radios so that they're not missing a call. Rick had requested as fire chief that we consider amalgamating all 3 years into 2021 and have all of the radios purchased in one simultaneous order so that all departments are converted at the same time and there is no requirement to have some on one system and some on another. So that is one request that is being made by the fire chief to be considered. But I haven't moved it around the budget yet because we're not aware of whether council would entertain that or not, or the committee would entertain that or not.
Okay, one more question, Mr. Chairman. Under roads, there's a plows / sander for $25,000 in 2020. and I can't remember what that is, but it's obviously not a truck for $25,000.
That's correct. It's just an attachment for our 3/4 1-ton truck.
Okay, so it's an attachment for an existing vehicle?
That's right, yeah.
So will we have two single axle trucks available then, Bill?
Well, that's
plows
just
on them?
that's an attachment. I don't know if you're talking about that in context to single axle plows, to the discussions we've had in the past.
Well, I know we have a single axle plow that comes up Jameson, and so with this attachment, is this a sander or a plow?
I'll have to look into with Mark, because we have both on our truck already.
Okay, well, we talked about this as streets and roads, but
sure, I'll have that detail for you at the next meeting.
Yeah. Right. Thanks. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I see your hand, Paul, but I'm going to go to Lisa first. Yes, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm going to take this down.
That's other Paul.
It's okay. I'm getting used to it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I see. I guess one of my questions for a lot of the items that or projects that are identified as new is like, why didn't we know about it last year? So for something that is such a big capital cost, like playground rehabilitation, like how come that wasn't on the budget for 2021 when we approved the 2020 budget? How is that new?
That's a new item. Last year, we approved a budget to do the inspections by a professional, and the professional identified those issues.
So
it's
these
also
this is rehab for in a number of different parks within the MD.
That's right, and it's also came to light with the transition of really with the new parks department, with the responsibility now under Kendra.
Sure, that doesn't make sense.
We've had other people managing the program. We've had the community services coordinator and the utilities foreman managing the program, and with the transition and the change in staff, some concerns were raised in a new direction towards
that
us.
Was previously raised before.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess for some of the other new stuff, I'm not sure what the Trans-Canada Trail deficiencies are, but that would be interesting to find out. I know the Rehabilitate MR Trail between RB and LB, that's Rivers Bend and Limestone Valley, I assume?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. I'm happy to see that. I understand what that is for.
The other deficiencies, if I can just jump in, we'll present the playground parks rehabilitation plan at the next Finance and Act meeting. Probably would be the best venue.
Okay.
As long as we present the other 10-year plans as well and can provide details then.
And then I assume the new council chambers, AV improvements, and the e-ticketing software for bylaw, those are both as the result of COVID?
So the AV equipment, yes, that was brought to light through COVID, but also streaming of the meetings has been quite successful from what I understand online. So this would allow us to continue that. streaming the meetings even once we go back into in-person meetings in council chambers. So having proper equipment available is what we're putting a pricing package together for. And then, sorry, the e-ticketing software and equipment is actually a new mandated direction from the province with respect to bylaw services.
So not COVID related.
Not COVID related, new legislation.
Okay. Okay, where was I here? I also don't understand what the household backflow rebate program is. That's $10,000 wastewater department.
Yeah, we're looking into a program if we can offer a rebate to residents in East Exshaw in existing houses that aren't rebuilding. If we can give them a rebate if they install a backflow preventer to prevent the wastewater system from back surging into their basements during these high groundwater issues primarily.
Okay. And then for the road rehabilitation, I see every year we've got a projected cost of $400,000. But what I might not have ever noticed before is that that $400,000 is coming from grants.
Yes, I had that coming from MSI funding.
MSI funding. Okay, so
but that will be subject to change. I'm going to have to modify those future years because I don't know what is happening with the new program or what our allocations are going to be or how it's been budgeted. But we had applied for MSI funding for road rehab.
Yeah.
For the term. So
okay.
That was the grant that it was coming from. But I'm going to have to investigate this new, I can't remember the name of the program, but they're ending it in 22, I believe. And changing the structure and the name of the program. Again, another unknown.
Okay. And then on the previous page, $350,000 is going into the roads reserve.
Yes.
And as Rob pointed out before, that's for upgrades and improvements. What is this $400,000 for as well? So is that also for upgrades and improvements?
Well, one is to build the reserve, so when we no longer have grant funding, we can continue our roads program with the $400,000 a year. Mm-hmm. The few years ago, the roads reserve was deficient, so we've worked hard through utilizing the MSI program and considerable reserve contributions to rebuild that reserve account. Mm-hmm. And this will just ensure the reserve contribution on that previous page is ensuring the longevity of the roads program.
Okay. And then I was wondering if there's anything or if we should add anything about possible expenses from the report that we're getting about the East Exshaw groundwater flooding. I imagine, I don't know if we're at a point or hopefully we'll have some sort of resolution there before the end of our budgeting process to see if there were any improvements. I think one of the questions we asked the hydrogeologist is what can we do and how much will it cost? So that would be something to consider, I believe. And I also wonder if another project we should consider is the ward boundaries discussion. I know there would be a cost attached to that should council choose to change any of the ward boundaries before the next election cycle.
The ward boundary discussion would just, or not discussion, but costs would be allocated through your operating budget. I don't believe that they would be capital in nature. Just be part of our annual operating fund. Once it becomes known when that would be addressed, it would get incorporated into that budget through legislative expenses. And then with respect to anything coming out of the hydrogeological report, can't be adding anything to the budget without knowing what the results of that report are. So that would either have to be incorporated in a future budget if it's not available prior to this budget being passed, or we would need to, I have nothing to put a placeholder in because I don't know what is coming out of that report at this time. Is that correct, Rob?
Yes, it is.
Is that something that where we could use the general capital reserve, or how would that work?
Again, I can't project what we don't know. So anything resulting from reports that we're waiting for results on, it depends on the timing of the action, if there is any action, and what the cost of it was. We've got different means of being able to bring forward an unbudgeted item through either opening the budget or if it is presented as an emergency item, council can vote on it and fund it without opening the budget back up. So that's something that, and until we have a report in our hands with recommendations, we can't really put an item into the budget to address that. I'll let Rob speak to that further if he wishes.
No, we don't know. It's an unknown for us right now, Councillor Oswald. So we may have something before council approves this budget, but as Shane has pointed out, there are other means for us to be able to deal with any recommendations that are coming out, and cost obviously will be the biggest factor.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if there's recommendations being provided, that there's a way to fund these recommendations. So I understand that we don't have a project cost or anything like that, but considering that report was supposed to be due, or was originally due in July, I sure hope we get it before this budget is passed.
Okay. Moving on. Lisa? Okay. Eric, I think we haven't gotten to you on your list.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 24, water course crossing inventory and inspections. Anybody know what that's all about?
Bridges.
Yes, we found out this year that we've got obligations to water crossings.
You mean bridges and culverts?
No, it's a little more complicated than our bridge and culvert program is for the structural capacity of the and condition of the bridges and culverts. This is how it affects how those bridges, culverts, and maybe other culverts, if they're classified as water courses and if they're affecting, I'll call it water course quality. So administration has attended, or we've been part of various webinars, and there's an obligation on the municipality to know the water courses and these crossings and to rehabilitate them environmentally. So that's the beginning of that program. The first step would be to inventory them. What is a water crossing according to AP, and what's our obligations to rehabilitate it?
Well, good luck with that. There's probably a dozen on my ranch. You want to start here? I prefer if you finished here. I don't know where this is going to go. Or I mean, this sounds crazy to me. I mean, hanging culverts. I can understand why it might be appropriate to know where the hanging culverts are. But at any rate, this is kind of weird to me. But I'll just sort of make those comments with respect to getting down the line. There's a whole list of things on fire, and generally speaking, I think I'd be supportive of most of them. But I still think we need to have a serious conversation about why the MD of Bighorn, with its 1,400 residents, is expected to be the Boy Scouts of the eastern slopes and take care of fire calls on our neighbor to the east with 5,000 residents, more or less, and as well as major highways, as well as the forest reserve with the dirt bike and quad accidents. And many of these, some of these events result in some income to the fire department or to the MD, but come nowhere near paying for a truck. So I think we need to have a discussion at a later date about exploring or attempting to explore alternatives for funding for some of the stuff we do that's not even in our MD. A portable speed control sign that's attached to fire. Is that what you put up beside a playground to remind people how fast they're going, or is this something you would put up beside a car wreck to slow cars down? What's that all about?
Something to put up beside a car wreck to slow cars down to notify them of their speed. Believe it's a highway safety measure. I can verify that with Chief.
I thought we had one of those.
No, we have a portable speed trailer. This is a sign that would go on the bumper of a truck.
Okay.
It's a smaller piece of equipment that can be, I believe, in one of the trucks. Again, I have to verify that with Chief Lister.
Yeah, okay. We've got one in one of the trucks here, but it's just a hand fold up sign. It's not a electronic sign. It's just something that you put up on the approach to a motor vehicle accident or something that it identifies that there's an issue ahead. But I can't believe it would have cost $5,000. Anyway, I'm just commenting on that. And again, down into parks with all these new ones, I see there's a legal review of trails and playgrounds, but I think we just talked about part of the major increase in administration costs was to include some legal issues. So are these different legal issues or legal issues?
No, we've got some policies that we're reviewing and preparing, and I'm presenting a roads maintenance policy to Streets and Roads that was prepared by legal. And what I found is that the language in the policy is very, very important, and the process behind the policy. So there are like our roads, playgrounds, and trails, maybe to a lesser extent, there are liabilities associated with that policy. So it's simply to have the correct language in it, to have more confidence in that.
Well, I get that, but we review legal stuff all the time. We've got a legal component in the operating budget, so that's where I'm unclear, and I can have an answer to that next time. The one above it, to rehabilitate the trail. Is that the trail that we're spending $23,000 on snow removal, or is that a different trail?
Is that the Rivers Bend Limestone Valley Trail you're referring to, or the Trans-Canada Trail?
I think it would be Rivers Bend.
Yeah, that trail's grown in a little bit, needs some rework. So
But
we'd like to.
Is that the one we're doing snow removal on?
No, I don't believe so.
Which trail are we spending $23,000 doing snow removal on?
We're doing multiple trails throughout. I believe Dead Man's Flats, Exshaw, and Harvey Heights.
Okay. Okay. I was somewhat surprised with the vehicle extrication equipment for Jameson, bearing in mind most of the time they don't have enough crew to do a vehicle extrication, although a full complement of equipment would be more than $15,000. So I think we have to be careful that why would we put a bunch of equipment in a truck when there's not enough people to operate it, because you don't do a vehicle extrication with 2 or 3 members. Perhaps they'll get some more members soon, though. I'm not sure. That's, I mean, I could go down through the 22 to 24 budgets, but I don't know that there's much point. There's one thing that sticks out, though, for me, is we got the operations shop budgeted in 2024. Surely we could move on that before 2024. And we have the money in the bank. We've been told that we're waiting for, my understanding is we've been waiting for finality from the province on the land swap. Surely we'd have that before 2024. Is there any, Rob, have you got anything to add to that?
No, I think we'll make sure that that date corresponds with the corporate strategic plan. I think it's actually earlier than that.
Yeah, good. I'm relieved to hear that. With respect to the road rehabilitation thing, as everyone is aware, I've been agitating for some paving on Ghost Country Place and Pears Place for some years now, and I don't see it anywhere in the budget. So I'm hoping that we can get that into the budget somewhere reasonably soon. Bear in mind that the road rehabilitation projects that was budgeted for and could have gone forward this year did not, at the request of administration because of time commitments to some of the staff. So we have, thanks to Shana and others, been building up the roads reserve. When I first came on council, it was a negative number, and then now it's clearly a positive number. So my request is that get put into the budgeting process somewhere. And with that, I will say thank you for now.
Okay, thank you. Now we can go around with the questions that have been generated. Paul Ryan.
Thank you. I thought my hand was going to go to sleep there.
Oh, are you wanting another question, Lisa?
Yeah.
You have to wait. Okay. Go ahead. Paul Ryan.
All right, so my question goes back to the AFREX discussion initiated by Councillor Clark and Shana's response that Fire had requested that it all be done at once. Administration is spreading it out over time. My feeling is that transitioning to AFREX is inevitable. 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So my sense is going to be, instead of ripping the Band-Aid off slowly, that we bite the bullet for 1 year in 2021 and buy them all at one time, because I have a concern about using a 2 radio system. And a lot of us who have work and personal phones are used to carrying around 2 cell phones, and you already know what that's like. Now take somebody in an emergency situation who has 2 radios on charge, trying to figure out which one to take, and then jumping into a vehicle with a different one. So I'd like to know from administration what it takes for us to get the question in front of council to make the capital purchase all at one time in 2021, because we have the money. And we will have to make the expenditure one way or another.
Yes. Well, at the request of the committee, I can amend the draft and move the entire item into one line item for discussion at the next meeting, and then moving that line item as a single item forward in the budget process.
Do I need to make that as a motion, Mr. Chair?
No, I don't think so. I think we're just going to go around and see where different people are at, Paul. I make that a 198 and a $93,000 expenditure. Are those the two that you're concerned about?
3 of them, actually.
Okay, can you give me the numbers?
Hold on, I'll just do some math here.
Yeah, no, it's 198, and then it's a 93, and then it's another 93.
No, I believe the 291,000 should cover it. Oh,
so I've got 3.
23. Sorry, yes, it did extend over 4 years. I'll confirm the number to do a bulk purchase with Chief Lister. And then we will look at him when we were discussing it 2 weeks ago. I believe he had said about 300,000 was the cost to move forward. So I'll get a firm number from him, and we'll put together a memo that will go in with or a note to go in with the budget regarding this radio system, and then we can have further discussion on it and whether we can incorporate it into 1 year or what his proposal is for that.
I'm supporting that, but I'm wondering about the rest of council. Is there anyone with an opinion against Paul's suggestion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm not necessarily against it, but again, this is a huge cost for our 1,400 taxpayers, and I think we should be getting some support. We use radio systems on forest fires to help out the province. We used radio systems for our neighbors to the east, and we use radio systems on highway stuff. And our 1,400 people are supposed to just keep picking up the tab, and there's something wrong with this picture.
I could investigate if there's any grant funding that may be available for this type of initiative.
Okay. Paul, is there anything else?
Yeah, I had one other one, Mr. Chair, and that goes back to Councillor Roosevelt's initiating the discussion on putting a line item in for any potential mitigation work in East Exshaw as a result of the hydrogeologist report. And I'm sure council is probably aware that I may have given that a little bit of thought. The reason I did not bring it in there, Mr. Chair, is that I have no idea what's in that report, and I did not think that it would be appropriate to try to plug in a number based on, well, without knowing the number at all, to create expectations or limitations, and rather to do it as Shayna suggested it can be done, which I do know can be done, is if there is a need to spend a certain amount of money on something like that, that council can actually pass a resolution approving it without having to open the budget. Is that correct, Shayna?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Right. I'm coming around, I hope, to everybody. Lisa, not quite yet, but Paul Clark now.
Thank you, Dean. I brought this up earlier about the half section that we have in the northern part of the MD, and I looked it up on the MD map today, and that shows it's on the map portrayed as a lease, but I believe it's tenure property. Is that correct?
Rob?
A piece of property we received, I believe it was from a tax issue. So we still have that property, and it's not, I don't know, it's not leased. I haven't seen any lease agreements for it.
It's not leased.
Okay, so just for your information, it just shows up in green rather than yellow on the MD map.
Okay.
And the reason I brought that up is that I think we talked about what are we going to do with this, and there are a number of options for us, and I'd like to see a placeholder in the budget for some kind of a valuation and environmental analysis of this half section that's owned by the MD. I don't know how those are the right words or not, but like get the process started on what do we do with this, because we discussed that there's a number of options, and I'm looking for an outside party to do this, so it would be a consulting arrangement. And I suggest you can put in whatever you think the right number is for this type of analysis, Rob. I'd be interested in Councillor Butter's opinion because it's in his ward.
Well, thank you, Paul. My preferred use of that, of course, is for a new administration building, and I don't think we need to for that. I think we can just figure out where we're going to place it and go ahead and build it. And but if there's some other use contemplated, perhaps some other approach might be appropriate.
I have a question, Dean.
Yep.
So was that property in the possession of the MD of Bighorn when we did that Sotheby's best and highest value use evaluation of all of the MD owned properties? Has that not already been done?
I'm not sure, Paul. I'd have to check on that.
We did do that.
Do you remember when the year was?
That piece of
My recollection is that it was evaluated in that, and the value of logging that those 2 quarters was also considered.
I believe there is a report someplace.
Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman, if there was if that report was done a few years ago, the conditions are changed significantly now. I don't know if anybody's followed the timber industry, but I looked at it this morning, and there's a severe shortage of lumber in Alberta right now. And coming down the Big Hill and Spray Lakes, looking at Spray Lakes, their yard is virtually empty. So there is an opportunity there for the MD, and there's also the consideration of Fire Smart, given that we own those 2 quarters. Do we have some liability if there's some random camping in there and something like the latest fire at Black Rock would occur?
Okay.
Just open that for conversation.
Yeah, we've had some of these conversations in strat planning, and it's coming forward into these budget discussions. I don't mind that, but some of the discussions are going to have to continue on the strat planning side, and some of them are going to continue to be budget questions. I don't know how to manage that, to be honest with you, but I understand it as 2 different kinds of conversations. The only conversation here is budgeting.
And I agree with you, but we have been talking about this in strat planning for some time. What I'm trying to do is get this on the agenda, and I'm doing it through the budgeting process. If you want me to do it some other way.
No, you can there are many methods that councillors can legitimately bring questions forward with, Paul. There's nothing wrong with your question. There's nothing wrong with posing it before council. But I am saying that we have to be careful to stick with the chore at hand, which is to get a budget that reflects our assessment and mill rate. And we can continue with, some of these larger questions, both in budget and in strat planning. But they are large questions, and I'm trying not to get to the high level discussion. I'm trying to get to the numbers. You're trying to get to the lines. I appreciate that. It's valid. Others have been doing the same thing, Paul. I don't know who's next, but I think it's Lisa. Paul, you have another question? Paul Clark. You have your hand up?
No, I'm sorry. I'm finished. That was my point.
Lisa?
Well, further to Councillor Clark's point, though, I think it is important that we are holding our MD strategic plans accountable, because that is part of our strategic plan. And I understand where Councillor Clark is coming from in terms of if there is something that needs to be completed to start making this actually happen, we need to start taking those steps. I know during my term I have seen an assessment of all the values of the MD owned land. I don't know where to find that, but it's got to be in a part of our administrative history or part of our strat planning discussion. So administration should be able to find that report in that or in one of those documents over the last 3 years. We haven't had that many, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. But I do understand where Councillor Clark is coming from, because part of our job as council and as this committee is to make sure we're upholding our strategic goals. And disposal of surplus MD owned properties is one of those strategic goals. My other point is actually following up with what Councillor Butters had said with regards to the operation shop. And again, part of our strategic goals had the operation shop happening much sooner than 2024. There was the year of 2021 attached to that project. I can understand that that might be too soon now with COVID and with the lack of completion with the land swap, but we need to get that prioritized earlier than 2024 for our next version of this budget.
Lisa, to that one, my understanding is that we are going forward with the planning of the building. I understand that the land swap will be complete at some point. There's a discussion as to when the government intends to be complete, and I haven't finished that discussion yet, so I can't give you a date, but it's not 2024. And then we have to get servicing in, and I'm taking that 2024 would be building under construction and occupied.
Well, yeah, I certainly hope it would be occupied by 2024, but I think if we have enough of the information in hand to start to actually getting the ball rolling here with where we're going to put this and what it's going to look like, or we need to get that ball rolling. Yeah. So like just coming up with some an idea of like design build or however that is going to proceed. I don't think we would be remiss if we put it in the 2021 budget to get that project started.
There is a 2020 budget item already, and that is, and I'll turn it here. That is for doing an assessment for the location of an op shop, another MD buildings required administration and fire hall. That's the terms of reference to be completed and go to council. So actually location has to be determined, as well as what is going to be required in any of those 3 buildings, the priority of how it will be developed, and then also the land swap plays into it, because the land swap, the lands, which are 2 feathers lands, affords probably the best place to put an operation shop. However, there was other discussion about the end of Mount Island Drive, where the existing op shop is now, where the fire hall is, and some other empty lands there, that perhaps that allowed for an operation shop to be constructed there, and perhaps an enhanced emergency services building, fire hall. That needs to be determined under that terms of reference to find out where to place the building and what order and what is required in those buildings. So we can't jump to actually how we're going to build it. I think we need to get the location first and the needs for what that building is going to require. And that's what terms of reference is about and the ensuing report.
I completely understand that. I would hate to see my whole 4-year term come and go without something suggesting there's a commitment to actually building this building somewhere in the MD. So that's my, it feels like we've been having the same discussions for years, and because of the land swap, that's been encouraging the length of this discussion. But at the same time, there comes a point where we just have to make a decision based off of what we have today.
Well, it's in the capital plan, corporation's plan. It's also in the budget. So commitments are being made by council.
But part of the strategic plan is to have obtain site and construct a new operations shop by December 31st, 2021.
Yeah, that's when we first put it together, and we always got COVID in the way. Plus, we have to assess the lands that are on the end of Mount Ellen Drive, as well as possibly the lands from the land swap. So we need to find out where we're going to put these buildings.
I 100% agree. I just
if I was able to have a land swap done and moving forward, I would be obviously the first thing to do is build the operation shop, which I know you toured yesterday.
So which year would you like to see the operation shop budgeted under?
To be completed?
I would say, I don't know if 2024, if that 2.5 million means to be completed in 2024, or if that means to start in 2024.
Okay. Well, you're raising a good point. I'll have that discussion with Shayna, and we'll look back at the corporate strategic plan and find a spot we'll try to be as realistic as possible.
Thank you.
Whatever we have for the consultant who takes over from the RFP that we're going to be putting out, we have to make sure we've got all the pieces of land in play so we get the best results.
Okay. I have a question.
Yes, but let me go to Eric first because I cannot see his hand. Eric, are you asking a question?
No, I think I'm getting hungry, Chief.
Yeah, I share your predicament. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so Robert, did I just hear you say that we can't do the evaluation of our existing lands until we have all the lands that are in play, and that's suggesting that it won't happen until after we get the land swap confirmed?
No, I'll do the lands with the land swap and also the lands at the end of Mount Ellen Drive. That was a request by council. That's what followed.
Okay, I'm satisfied now. I thought we were going to get delayed another millennium.
No, we know the size of the parcel at 2 feathers, so we can use that.
Okay.
All right. We've all had a chance to go at the budget, and we've all made suggestions, and I've heard lots of comments from councillors in a round table. I'm going to go to Shayna now, and Shayna, have you got any clarifications that you need at this point from what you've heard?
Looking back through my notes, I don't believe I need any clarifications. I've got some good notes from this meeting. I've got some ideas of how to bring forward the next presentation. So I look forward to our continued discussion on October 27th.
Okay, thank you. Rob, CAO, have you got any clarifications you need?
No, I'm totally fine. I've taken a lot of notes as well, which Shane and I will be comparing, but you've given us some food for thought and definitely a number of items.
Okay, and I want council to move to page 29 or 28, pardon me, right in the middle of my bifocals. But we have recommendations. Should we be having a motion supporting these recommendations?
Well, I'll make the first one, Mr. Chair.
The first one is the Finance and Economic Committee recommends administration to make amendments and as discussed for the October 27th meeting. Yes, Rob?
Yeah, actually, those are the recommendations that Shana has on her information report.
Yes.
So we had talked earlier about having, after we'd finished, council had finished this discussion, or the committee had finished its discussion, that we just vote on those two motions.
Yes.
Yes, and I made the first motion, Mr. Chair.
But just now.
Yes.
Are we in process, Rob?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So is there any discussion? I'm not hearing any. So let's call the question. All in favor? One hand, two hands, Paul Clark, three hands, and Eric.
In favor.
So that's 5-0. And motion for the second item. I have it from Lisa. Second item is the Finance and Economic Development Committee received the first draft of the 2021 budget as information. Calling the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3. Eric?
In favor.
And myself. So that's 5-0. Shana, thank you for all the work. It's getting this ball rolling. And of course, it's easier to steer something in motion than it is standing still. So we're moving forward with this and it has meaning.
Thank you.
We now want to go in camera. Is that right, Rob?
It is, and you know what? I had set the closed session for noon. Never think it would go this long for the discussion, so thank you. So I'm going to have to extend that. So give me a moment to do that so you can get into the.
So stay right here.
Stay right there. Yes.
Stay right
and
here.
I will send you a revised invite to the closed session.
Go for it.
And we are live. Go ahead, Reeve Cooper.
We're back in public session. I need a motion to adjourn.
You already have it from me.
I have it from Paul Ryan. Calling the question. All in favor? We are adjourned. Have a great afternoon, folks.
What are you talking about? You got a public hearing in 1 hour.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bob.
Hey,
For
you're
now.
welcome.
Bye, everyone. Stop.